Welcome to Recap with Cassie. It's all about movies over here. If you find this type of content interesting, please make sure to subscribe. Give me a thumbs up, turn on the notification bell, and share this video. In the beginning, we witness Mr. Chen being interviewed by the principal of Tokchi Secondary School. Despite Mr. Chen lacking experience, the principal rejects his application, stating that they are seeking someone with more experience. The principal offers to write Mr. Chen a reference letter instead. However, Mr. Chen surprises the principal by presenting a recommendation letter from a higher official, leading the principal to change his mind and offer him the job. Before leaving, the principal inquires why Mr. Chen wishes to teach at their school, to which he responds with a smile, saying they'll see each other on the first day of school. On the first day of class, Mr. Chen enters the classroom, but the students pay him no attention and carry on with their activities, such as cooking ramen, playing musical instruments, applying makeup, or playing video games. Despite greeting them, Mr. Chen receives no replies. He approaches the students making ramen and advises them about the health risks associated with excessive sodium consumption. But they disregard him and continue their activities. Moving on, Mr. Chen engages with a student playing the ukulele, showcasing his own skills before proceeding to talk to another student reading about cars. He discusses the importance of safe driving when she eventually obtains her license. Next, he approaches a student at the back of the class who is focused on achieving a high score. Mr. Chen warns him about phone radiation and the importance of taking regular 15-minute breaks. He then wakes up a sleeping student and introduces himself to the entire class at the front. As he writes his name and number on the board, the students mock his handwriting. Disheartened, Mr. Chen is asked to leave by one of the students, and they resume their unruly behavior. Feeling determined to get their attention, Mr. Chen picks up a rubber band and chalk and shoots it at the fire sprinkler, causing water to pour all over the classroom. With the students now gathered at the end of the classroom to avoid the water, Mr. Chen welcomes them to his class. After school, a notorious group of 5 low-ranking students gathers at the sports supply store to smoke cigarettes. One of the group members, Jack, who has a crush on a top-ranking student from another class, is caught staring at her picture on his phone by his friends, who mock him. This group has an ongoing rivalry with the wealthy kids from the basketball team. On one occasion, they enter the supply room and taunt Jack due to his economic status. Later, while the rich kids are playing basketball, Jack and his friends watch them. Jack accidentally drops a bottle onto the court, causing the basketball leader to fall. The group laughs, but as a consequence, they receive detention from Mrs. Liang at the end of school. In an attempt to avoid detention, they play a prank on her and manage to run away while she is busy cleaning up. The school is facing financial distress due to a meeting held by the school authorities, which causes distress to the principal. The education board is planning to deduct 20% of the school's annual funding. The board members decide to tour the school to observe how the funds are being utilized. Meanwhile, Mr. Chen enters the classroom, unaware that the students have set up a bucket on the door as a prank. Luckily, he exhibits fast reflexes and pushes the bucket away, surprising the students. Mr. Chen approaches Jack and asks for his pack of cigarettes, knowing that he smokes. Then he quizzes Zufa about the 3 ingredients in a cigar. When Zufa answers correctly, he is allowed to skip class for the day. Other students start banging their desks, requesting the same privilege. Mr. Chen asks them to stop and hands each of them a cigarette, asking them to analyze it. He avoids mentioning the health disadvantages of smoking, knowing it won't be effective, and instead discusses the outcomes of smoking and how tar forms in their lungs. For the first time, the students pay attention to the teacher. When the bell rings, he asks them to return the cigarettes, and the students reluctantly comply. Later that day, Jack's group gets into a fight with the basketball team in the cafeteria. The basketball team leader trips a boy named Bruce, and in the process, they cause destruction to the place. Mr. Chen is informed that 5 students from his class were suspended for initiating the fight. He encounters Jack fighting with other students in the hallway and intervenes to stop them. When asked to calm down, Jack accuses the school of being unfair because the rich kids receive no punishments. Mr. Chen decides to learn more about each of the 5 students involved. He discovers that Zufa, the first student, is the son of a Pakistani immigrant who faces discrimination due to his race and often false accusations of theft by the police. His dream is to become a musician. The second student, Danan, has been a disappointment to her father since birth because she is not a son. She has tried desperately to gain her father's respect, even cutting her hair and pretending to be a boy by playing with cars. The 2 brothers, Bruce and Chris, faced abandonment by their mother, leading their father into alcoholism. With only each other to rely on, Bruce escaped reality by becoming obsessed with video games, while Chris worked hard at a grocery store to support the family. However, Mr. Chen couldn't find any information about Jack's family in the files he reviewed. In the following scene, we witness Jack working as a waiter in a restaurant. An MMA bettor named John Ying arrives with his business partners. Jack tries to steal a fancy light, but he is caught, leading to a beating by John Ying's men. When John Ying learns that Jack is a student, he gives him some money and offers him a job as their delivery boy. Meanwhile, Mr. Chen visits Zufa's home and finds him running away from his father and associates after stealing a ticket. Chen helps him out, but after hearing the full story, takes the father's side. Later, Mr. Chen and Zufa hang out on a bridge, and to motivate Zufa, Mr. Chen sings with a street-performing band. Encouraged, Zufa joins in and sings in front of people for the first time since being bullied in school years ago. In another scenario, Bruce and Chris's father comes home late and demands that they bring him a beer from the store. When they refuse, he becomes angry and yells at them to leave the house. The next day, Mr. Chen meets with their father and persuades him to go to rehab for the sake of his son's well-being. As for Danan, her father brings her a bag of makeup and tells her to act like a girl for once. Danan becomes furious with him, feeling constantly inadequate. She sneaks out of the house with the car keys and intends to drive away in her father's car, but Mr. Chen stops her. Instead, he takes her to a go-kart racetrack and invites her father to join them for a race. During the race, Danan and her father show no mercy toward each other, but the experience leads to a realization of their love for each other. Back at school, Bruce and Chris are sent on a trip to a rehabilitation center to interview a recovering alcoholic, only to discover that the person they need to interview is their own father. He apologizes to them without revealing their relationship, leaving the brothers in tears. Jack has started working for John Ying and is offered a significant amount of money to drug a fighter's drink in the next match. Although reluctant, Jack is forced to accept the offer. On the day of the fight, John Ying sponsors the event but bets on the fighter's loss. Jack puts drugs in the fighter's drink but gets caught and ends up locked in a locker. Mr. Chen arrives at the scene and intervenes to save Jack, defeating John Ying's men and even the fighter himself. After the incident, news spreads, and Mr. Chen gains popularity as the man who beat up a professional fighter to protect his students. The students start respecting him, and their attitudes change drastically from before. A flashback reveals that Mr. Chen was once a prankster during his school days, but a life-changing event made him a more serious and dedicated teacher. Despite his success in motivating most of the students to study hard for the college entrance exams, Bruce becomes addicted to pills and fails the mock test. Mr. Chen promises to help him, but Bruce's depression worsens, leading to a tragic event where he jumps off the balcony of their house and ends up in a coma. The media wrongly blames Mr. Chen and the school for the incident, and the education board decides to revoke his teaching license. As Mr. Chen packs his belongings and prepares to leave the school, the heartbroken students plead with him to stay. Despite his absence, the students are determined to study twice as hard to prove to the board that Mr. Chen is an excellent teacher. On the day of the test, Jack and his classmates receive a text from Mr. Chen asking them to meet at school before the exam. When they gather, they discover that it was John Ying's plan to confine them in school to prevent them from reaching the examination hall on time. John Ying intends to teach Mr. Chen a lesson through this scheme. Later, Mr. Chen arrives at the school and learns about John Ying's plan. He releases the students and confronts John Ying's people, engaging in a fight to protect the kids. As the students escape and rush to the examination hall, Mr. Chen continues to battle John Ying. During their one-on-one fight, John Ying reveals that he is the person Mr. Chen once threw water balloons at when they were kids. It turns out that since Henry, John Ying, broke his arm during that incident, he couldn't compete in a major musical competition and hasn't played the piano since. He blames Mr. Chen for ruining his dream. Despite the heated confrontation, Mr. Chen tries to reason with John Ying. However, the conflict escalates, and they struggle to gain control of a knife. Eventually, Mr. Chen has the opportunity to harm John Ying but chooses not to. Instead, he asks for forgiveness for what he did when they were little and walks away from the fight. Meanwhile, the students manage to reach the examination hall in time and complete the exam. A few weeks later, they all pass with flying colors. John Ying starts playing the piano again but realizes he has much practice ahead of him to regain his former skill. Bruce quickly recovers and promises to attend next year's entrance exam. The principal is delighted as the board decides to grant a 20% bonus fund due to the student's excellent performance in the entrance exam. Mr. Chen returns to teaching and, in a similar playful manner, uses the sprinkler trick on another batch of students.